And it's time for Lefties Losing It. Let's start with this disgusting display by lefty losers at what should have been a sombre moment as Vice President Vance and Usha Vance attended the Annunciation Catholic Church in Minneapolis in remembrance of the victims of last week's shooting. But idiot lefties had to hijack the moment.
Do better! You're a coward! Do better!
And I'll have more on Vance later. But first, let's check in with Joy Reid, who's gone from taunting people in tears to being in tears.
Wipe your own tears, and for God's sakes, stop whining. It's embarrassing.
I'm sorry. That what I was doing had value.
No, your show never had any value other than for my segment. Now, just last week, Joy Reid was claiming white people have never invented anything. Well, her latest claim is admitting that she's a product of DEI, and she's proud of it.
As many times as I have been called DEI or an affirmative action baby and all that, you know what I never get? Mad. Because I actually am very much in favor of DEI. I don't take that as an insult because I understand that that means that I'm just damn excellent and innovative. And yeah, I am DEI. I'm bringing diversity, and that's bringing something great. You're not insulting me. If you say, oh, you're an affirmative action person that got into Harvard, I'm like, yeah, I got into Harvard with affirmative action, and Yale, and Brown, and also, Vassar, and the University of Denver.
Yep, some bright, hardworking young Asian probably missed out on the opportunity of a lifetime, so Joy could take advantage of DEI. And what an education she received. This mad banshee is now claiming that Donald Trump was never shot. It's one thing to have these crazy thoughts in your head, Joy, but she's sharing them on the World Wide Web. Here she is with fellow former MSNBC host Katie Fang. And folks, get ready to be assailed by a weapon-grade crazy.
He's got these magical doctors who claim that he was shot in the ear, but his ear, I guess, grew back. He had a Duplo bandage on 1 minute, no bandage the next. We can't get a medical record from this alleged assassination. He was supposedly shot. We have nothing. We've got nothing.
Where are the investigative records? One day he slapped his maxi pad on his ear. The next day the ear is totally fine.
It's fine. And I remember being in mainstream media where we both used to work saying, isn't it odd that we've never asked for his medical records? And I got in trouble for that. The mainstream media isn't demanding his medical records. They're not demanding anything. They're terrified of this man. And now that the people are speculating that he might have died, we only get that online. But mainstream media is acting like everything's fine. He seems fine to me.
That's because his fine, Joy, your crazed fantasies and wishful thinking are not substitutes for facts. Now to the man who could have been vice president, the uniquely awful Walz, Tampon Tim. Here he is talking about the false reports of Donald Trump's death, and he tells his sad supporters to remain hopeful that the president will die. What an utterly hideous human being this commie weirdo is.
You get up in the morning and you doom scroll through things, and although I will say this, the last few days you woke up thinking there might be news. Just saying. There will be news sometime, just so you know, there will be news.
Hideous stuff. Even Stephen Colbert, yes, the stage 4 TDS sufferer Stephen Colbert, made it clear to his audience that no decent person hopes for the president to die.
This weekend, the biggest story was frenzied social media rumors speculating whether Donald Trump had died. For the record, Donald Trump is very much alive, okay? And no, we like our presidents alive. Donald Trump is very much alive, and this whole crazy rumor started simply because Trump had 0 events on his schedule Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday.
And the man who wants to be the next Democrat president, and he is a front runner because the Democrats have a dangerously shallow talent pool, and Gavin Newsom, like any good lefty, isn't above whipping up hysteria and indulging in all sorts of lies and hyperbole.
I don't think Donald Trump wants another election. You think for a second you want... I have 24 Trump 2028 hats. His folks keep sending me.
There you go. There'll be no more elections because there's a baseball cap with Trump 2028 on it. It's a joke, Gavin. That's why people are sending it to you. And he wasn't done there. Here he claims that Donald Trump does not want immigrants to vote in 2028.
You think ICE is not going to show up around voting and polling booths to chill participation? You know that. The National Guard, you know that. Everybody knows what's at stake, so we have to put a stake in the ground and do things differently.
Did Gavin just admit something there, that illegal immigrants may in some cases be voting? Because legal migrants have zero to fear from ICE. They're not intimidated, and various polls have shown that they're in fact in favour of Donald Trump's deportation program. Now, whoever the Democrat candidate is, they're likely to face one of the very best politicians in US history. It's a big statement, I know, but JD Vance is the whole package. His intellect, his conviction, his personal history and achievements, his beautiful family. He is the perfect candidate. And the media still haven't worked that out. They think they can take him on. The media are slow learners, and that's certainly the case when it comes to NBC. Here is host Krista Welker trying the old people are saying routine with JD Vance regarding the raid on warmonger and serial leaker John Bolton's property. The VP wasn't having it.
You know, a lot of people have already looked at this and said, this looks a lot like retribution. Is this retribution?
Well, who has said it looks a lot like retribution, Kristen? A lot of people who tried to throw Donald Trump in prison for completely fake charges that were later thrown out by multiple different courts.
And the Vice President explains here about the impact illegal immigrants have on elections because they are counted in the census. And that costs American citizens real representation.
We had way fewer House seats than we should have. One, if the Democrats hadn't aggressively gerrymandered, and two, if illegal aliens weren't counted in the census for purposes of apportioning congressional seats. The best estimates I've seen is that in California, for example, has 5 additional congressional seats than it should have because they count illegal aliens for the purpose of apportioning representatives. Meanwhile, Ohio, my home state, lost a representative. We're literally losing representatives for American citizens in order to give congressional representation to illegal aliens. Republicans are trying to balance out the scales a little bit for basic fairness and for the integrity of our democracy.
Joining me now is Newsweek's Senior Editor-at-Large and Article 3 Project Senior Counsel Josh Hammer. Josh, that trend is undeniable. Having illegal immigrants counted in the census makes a difference, a big difference that undermines America's democracy.
Yeah, Rita, it's really positively abhorrent, is it not? There's an interesting constitutional legal debate here as to whether or not it should be only citizens or green card holders, legal permanent residents there. That's actually a somewhat interesting 14th Amendment legal debate. But the notion that illegal aliens, people who are in this country illegally, that they should be counted as persons for purposes of apportionment. They're literally, as a legal matter, they're literally not here. I mean, they might physically be here, but legally under the eyes of the United States Constitution, under the eyes of our government, under the eyes of the rule of law, they're not here. They shouldn't be counted. And J.D. Vance is right that blue states have historically disproportionately benefited from this practice. Now, it's interesting. Donald Trump actually made a move to change this practice back during the first term there. He was stopped by John Roberts and a 5-4 majority of the U.S. Supreme Court. It was an utterly preposterous ruling. At the time, I thought that Donald Trump should seriously consider basically just sticking 2 middle fingers to the Supreme Court and just outright defying the order. He didn't do that there, but now he has another opportunity to try to go for it there. That's something that frankly should have been done a very, very long time ago, and I look forward to seeing it getting done, ideally post-haste here.
Now, we have plenty of serious matters to discuss, Josh, including narco-terrorists being blown up by the Trump administration. But before we do that, let's look at one of the all-time great Donald Trump social media posts. He posted this earlier today on Truth Social about Rosie O'Donnell. He wrote, "As previously mentioned, we are giving serious thought to taking away Rosie O'Donnell's citizenship. She is not a great American and is, in my opinion, incapable of being so." Josh, he may just be serious, but he really is the funniest president we've ever had. This woman claimed just this week, Rosie O'Donnell, that the Minnesota shooter, the trans-identified lunatic who wanted to kill Donald Trump, was actually a Republican, a MAGA supporter. But I would argue being a little bit crazy isn't grounds for being stripped of your citizenship.
You know, Rita, I remember the first Republican presidential primary debate all the way back in August 2015. This is the very first, that very chaotic cycle. There were like 10 or 15 candidates running back then. And if memory serves, I think it was Megyn Kelly was moderating that debate. I think she was with Fox News back at the time. And this is when Donald Trump had that famous comment where he kind of leans in over the microphone. He says, "No, only Rosie O'Donnell."
You've called women you don't like fat pigs, dogs, slobs, and disgusting animals. Your Twitter account...
Only Rosie O'Donnell.
No, it wasn't.
You know, like he only hates Rosie O'Donnell, not all women. So, I mean, Rosie O'Donnell and Donald Trump have a very long and very testy and very combative relationship there. I mean, we can quibble as to whether or not this sort of conduct, these sort of posts are quote unquote beneath the dignity of the president of the United States. I mean, frankly, for being candid there, that ship sailed a very long time ago. But I think more broadly speaking, I mean, you know, this is a point that you and I have discussed before. I mean, Donald Trump's humor is one of his bar none absolute greatest political traits. He is laugh out loud, knee slap funny. I mean, when he gets up there behind the microphone, when he gets behind his keyboard to type away social media there, you know that you are in for a thrill, which makes sense because the guy is a businessman. He is a show businessman, someone who has operated casinos, hotels, the art of the deal, The Apprentice, reality TV, selling Trump vodka, Trump this, Trump that there. He gets it. He knows how to sell a product there. In this case, the product, frankly, is presidency. Look, on the actual merits, I obviously agree with you.
I don't think it's serious.
I don't think
I don't think he's serious.
Not.
And I think this is what so many of his opponents fail to see. While his supporters can discern the difference between serious policy and him having a laugh on social media. And the picture he posted with that statement was pretty funny as well. Now, on serious matters, the Trump administration is under fire from the usual suspects for stopping a big shipment of narcotics from reaching US soil. They blew up the boat, and the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, has been clear that this action was necessary to save American lives.
The President of the United States has determined that narco-terrorist organizations pose a threat to the national security of the United States. I don't need to explain to you why. They are traffickers of people, they are traffickers of deadly drugs, they are traffickers of all kinds of illicit means, and they use the money that they generate to destabilize governments in the region, which in and of itself then poses a threat to the United States. These are organized, corporate-structured organizations who specialize in the trafficking of deadly drugs into the United States of America. They pose an immediate threat to the United States. Period. If you're on a boat full of cocaine or fentanyl or whatever headed to the United States, you're an immediate threat to the United States. And the President, under his authority as Commander-in-Chief, has a right, under exigent circumstances, to eliminate imminent threats to the United States. And that's what he did yesterday in international waters, and that's what he intends to do. We're not going to sit back anymore and watch these people sail up and down the Caribbean like a cruise ship. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen anymore. They're not going to bring drugs into the United States. We're going to stop them. I know a lot of presidents have talked about doing it. This president is not a talker, he's a doer, and he's going to do it.
Josh, he went on to explain just simply stopping these boats and making arrests doesn't work. It's never worked. The drug cartels know they will lose a certain percentage of their cargo in that manner. They may rethink trafficking when their boats are being blown out of the water.
So another wonderful quip, by the way, from Marco Rubio. You know, Marco Rubio is genuinely excelling in this role as Secretary of State. I mean, he already was a pretty good senator in many ways, but he was built for this role. I mean, Marco Rubio is living his best life here in Washington, D.C., I would say, at this time. And he's totally right on the merits here as well. You know, one of Rubio's very first international trips, I think if memory serves, it actually might have been his very first trip back in late January, early February, after Donald Trump and the administration took office. Rubio went to multiple Central American countries, and the message there was unmistakable. In fact, the Wall Street Journal had a whole op-ed about it at the time there, which that the message that this administration was sending was that, yes, we're going to engage with the whole world, where we're going to engage with Europe. That was J.D. Vance in Munich. We're going to engage in the Middle East. We're going to engage with our Chinese Communist Party rivals, et cetera, there. but we're really going to pay very close attention to our own backyard. We're going to pay very close attention here to Latin America. There's a very venerable old tradition of American foreign policy thinking going all the way back to the James Monroe presidency. It was called the Monroe Doctrine 200 years ago in the early 19th century there. It's a very old, more conservative, realist way of thinking about foreign policy. And this administration is very much living it out. But, more specifically when it comes to Venezuela and the narco traffickers, yeah, he's right. You know what, Rita? Look, my cousin, may his memory be blessed, my cousin overdosed and died from fentanyl-laced cocaine 8 years ago. Way too many Americans, way too many Americans have similar stories to me. This has been a horrific epidemic there, whether it's coming from Mexico, whether it's coming from Venezuela and the Maduro regime, whether it's coming from Cuba with their Chinese allies and so forth. It doesn't matter. It has to be stopped. America has the will. It has the means to stop it there. And under this administration, Rita, it's going to do it.
Now, let's hear from the leader of Reform, possibly the next British Prime Minister, if the polls are right. Nigel Farage was in Washington, D.C., giving evidence to a US Congressional Committee holding a hearing into whether European laws threaten Americans' right to speak freely in the US. Here, Nigel Farage talks about just how far Britain has fallen, and he mentions the extraordinary case of Graham Linehan that shows no one is safe from these Orwellian anti-free speech laws.
I come from the land of Magna Carta. I come from the land that gave us the mother of parliaments, and it doesn't give me any great joy to be sitting in America and describing the really awful authoritarian situation that we have now sunk into. J.D. Vance did us all a service at the Munich Security Conference back in February this year. He really got this debate up and running, and it's a vital one. Graham Linehan, the comedic writer, and he put out some tweets months ago when he was in Arizona, and months later he arrives at Heathrow Airport to be met by 5 armed police. Armed police, not a big deal in the USA, a very big deal in the United Kingdom. 5 of them. And he was arrested and taken away for questioning. He's not even a British citizen. He's an Irish citizen. This could happen to any American man or woman that goes to Heathrow that has said things online that the British government and British police don't like.
Josh, I've had Graham Linehan on my program. I've had a look at what he posted. It's not in any way extreme or warranting police attention. How many Americans travelling to the UK could expect to be met by police and placed under arrest for tweets or social media posts that the British government deem offensive?
So, Rita, first of all, I actually saw Nigel Farage a few hours after he gave that testimony. I'm here in Washington, D.C., actually to speak at a conference, and I saw Nigel Farage. It was a whole reopening of the American affiliate of GB News, his conservative British TV network. There were a lot of Trump administration officials there. Caroline Levitt was there. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick were there. Many other pretty higher up luminaries as well. And the message was pretty unmistakable, which is that the Trump administration would love nothing more than for Nigel Farage to be the next prime minister of the UK. Frankly, I would love nothing more than for Nigel Farage to be the next prime minister of the UK, because if the UK has any chance of saving itself from going entirely through the looking glass, Alice in Wonderland style, then I think Nigel Farage is very much the man for the job, because they really are at this moment tragically going through the looking glass. I'll give you an example, which I think will kind of hammer home this point. So last summer, there was this whole uprising. There was a horrific killing of a second generation Rwandan in Britain of these girls at a dance class there in the south of England there, and then with these Muslim riots and then kind of other riots in response there. And I did a recording on my show, the Josh Hammer Show, and I talked about two-tier Keir Starmer for the Labour Party the Prime Minister there. Rita, I have a friend who is a lawyer in London who messaged me on WhatsApp and said, Josh, you should probably delete this episode. I said, What are you talking about here? He said, you actually might get dragged into British court for defamation for this. Now, as a matter of principle, I didn't delete it. I have not been dragged into court there. But that's just to say, Rita, that is seriously how on edge I think a lot of folks in the UK are. It is Orwellian totalitarian stuff. It's disgusting, Frank.
It is disgusting, and here Nigel Farage pleads with the US to hold the line on free speech.
Don't allow, piece by piece, this to happen here in America. And you would be doing us and yourselves and all freedom-loving people a favour if your politicians and your businesses said to the British government, you've simply got this wrong. At what point did we become North Korea? Well, I think the Irish comedy writer found that out 2 days ago at Heathrow Airport.
Now, before you go, we saw that terrible scene at the US Open as some lowlife took a cap a player was giving to a child. That dude has been named and shamed comprehensively by now, but here's the antidote, Josh, to that nastiness. Watch here as Blue Jays fan catches a baseball and immediately hands it to a young kid who breaks down in tears.
And how about some pretty nice sportsmanship by a Blue Jay fan out there? With that young Yankee fan, oh boy, that kid is not going to forget tonight, Roy.
It warms the heart, Josh.
Yeah, that's beautiful stuff. Look, I mean, Rita, I grew up a diehard baseball fan. We had partial season tickets growing up there. I have fond memories of seeing that sort of stuff in person, actually. I mean, like, that's kind of the quintessential American spirit, right? I mean, right there is kind of this selflessness, this ability to kind of pitch in, to kind of do for the children, for the next generation there. I mean, I don't know who the heck this schmuck is at the U.S. Open there who is stealing this cap there, but, that guy should be tarred and feathered in the public square. And hopefully, Rita, frankly, if I were advising the U.S. Open folks, the U.S. Tennis Association, I would say ban that guy for life because he doesn't deserve to buy a ticket anymore to the U.S. Open.
Oh, he has definitely been named and shamed. I've read a lot about him online in recent days. He's paid a heavy price for that little action. Josh Hammer, thanks for your time tonight.
Thank you, Rita.